You want me to put a stadium in my background too, like you guys would?
You have the intellectual look. You got books. Like I've got football stuff. That's good.
Those aren't
it shows one of us can read.
Those aren't books back there.
Wait a minute.
You forgot what books look like.
Yeah. It's been so long. Oh yeah. Okay. I thought that was a bookcase.
I haven't seen you in so long, Perk. What's with the beard? Wow. And
I know.
There's something different about that hair too. I don't know what's going on.
I know. It's a new year. I just figured, what the hell?
You're going for it. You're going for it.
Yeah, this is as thick as the beard gets, by the way. At 56 years old, it's still soft hair. It won't fill in. Gray. It's sad, really.
Perk is in a win now mode.
That's right.
He's going all in.
That's right.
I went to the Olympics and didn't shave and came back with when I look at the pictures, I still cannot barely see my beard. You know?
Really? Yeah.
It's a goatee. It's a goatee.
See, I know. Furones is the grown-up on this podcast.
He looks Cuban Amish, though. You know, I know what that is.
Yes, sir. All right. Welcome back, Dolphins fans. Been a few weeks since we met on Dolphins Deep Dive, since we wrapped up the draft in early May. But welcome. This is our second season of Dolphins Deep Dive on SunSentinel.com with me, your host, Dolphins columnist Chris Perkins. We got our boy Dolphins beat writer David Furones, and we got Sun Sentinel columnist Dave Hyde. Now, look, you can catch our podcasts on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. We're glad you're back with us once again. The Dolphins are embarking on a Super Bowl run. That's right. I said a Super Bowl run. That's a term we're going to use a few times this season. And then periodically, we're going to discuss whether the term is appropriate. But first things first, training camp opens on Wednesday. Veterans report tomorrow. Expectations are high for the Dolphins in their second year under Coach Mike McDaniel. The big play offensive trio of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa and wide receivers Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they're considered among the best playmaking combinations in the NFL. We're looking for a lot of action from them again this year. Defensively, the additions of highly regarded coordinator Vic Fangio and Pro Bowl cornerback Jalen Ramsey offer the hope of dominance. That's right, I said dominance defensively. We're going to talk about training camp goals, individual expectations, and season expectations. In this kickoff edition of Dolphins Deep Dive, let's dive in. All right, guys, we're going to talk about things that we expect, questions we expect to be answered in training camp this season. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about are the significant personnel battles. I think that backup quarterback is probably the most significant training camp battle, in my opinion, because, look, you got a starting quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, who has a tendency to miss games due to various injuries, most recently the concussions last season. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens between Mike White and Skylar Thompson. We've got other starting position battles, left guard, Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones. The number 3 receiver among Braxton Berrios, Robbie Chosen, River Craycraft, Eric Ezukama, Raheem Mostert, maybe Devon Achane. You got slot corner, Kader Kohu and Nick Needham. I know Needham is on the PUP list right now, physically unable to perform because of the Achilles injury. Got a backup left tackle battle, primarily probably between Kendall Lamb and Isaiah Wynn. Others could get in there. You've got a safety battle, the safety position beside Javon Holland. That'll be between Deshaun Elliott and Brandon Jones. So, Dave Hyde, I'm going to go to you first. What do you think is the most significant training camp battle, and will any of these battles matter in September? Do you think any of these positions, backup quarterback, starting left guard, will any of them be more significant than the other?
Well, the backup quarterback is significant for all the reasons you went into, but I don't think it's a battle. They went out and spent money on Mike White. Okay, they had a whole year to look at Skylar Thompson, and and then they go out and give Mike White pretty good backup money. And so to me, he is the backup unless he just, looks awful in training camp or gets hurt or something like that. But if Mike White isn't the backup, I'd be shocked.
And Furones, what do you think? I mean, what do you think about backup quarterback or the other position battles? What are you seeing there?
It's funny, we're leading off after an entire offseason with a backup role position battle. Like we go through the whole offseason, we're getting ready for training camp. Drum roll, what is our first topic? It's a backup role. But it really is important because we know every season Tua has been in Miami. The backup has been needed. And now he's taken measures this offseason with the strength training and jiu-jitsu to better protect himself. But just every year it has come up where the backup has been immersed into a game. For me, maybe slot corner or that third corner at least, whether it's in the slot or not, because we saw how much that also came up last year with the injuries at cornerback. Obviously, they had Byron Jones never even play a game, and Xavier Howard was hampered by the groin issues. But now you get Jalen Ramsey in there. That's one guy. Xavier Howard, you hope he's healthy and available. Now between you drafted a Cam Smith in the second round, Kader Kohu got valuable experience last season as an undrafted rookie, so now what kind of strides he can make, and then Nick Needham if you get him back off the PUP list. So then hopefully you don't have to dig too deep into, Trill Williams is also coming off an injury last year, and your Justin Bethels and Keon Crossins, who you want on special teams as well. So that's one battle. If we're not looking at right tackle, let's say, Tua's blindside, if that is indeed Austin Jackson's role, as Chris Greer has said, then that's probably one of the ones I'm looking at is that third cornerback.
And let me go somewhere else with this, because you're right. We build up Furones and we lead off with the backup positions. What about Tua? And we know that he's bigger, he's bulkier. We see it in the neck, we see it in the chest and the shoulders and the thighs, all around. We know that he took jiu-jitsu classes. How many games do you expect Tua to play? What's a realistic expectation?
Well, if he missed 5.5 last year, then I would say what I wrote in our countdown to camp is if he can get that up to where it's just 1 or maybe 2, and it's just because of a fluke injury, something like he took a hit to the hand or something, a finger issue throwing a ball. Something that's not going to keep him out multiple games consecutively. If he doesn't go back on for another concussion protocol stint, if they protect him from that, then that's progress. So out of a 17-game regular season, if he gets to 15, 16, then I would say, sure, that's a success. And then you only need your Mike White for that one-off game where you've seen with the Jets that he can just have that one really good game. He could also be really bad in one game, but he could give you that 1 3-touchdown, 0 interception game if he gets hot. So that's kind of what I'd be looking for. If it's just one or 2 games and it's not in the playoffs, it can't be at the end of the season when you really need that last game for playoff positioning, and then you want him available for that playoff game. You don't want to be going down to your third-string quarterback again in Buffalo or wherever they go this year.
And Hyde, let me ask you this, because sticking with training camp and what we want to see in training camp, you have written, fairly extensively or pretty loudly, I should say, about the injury situation and what the Dolphins are taking on here, right? Tua, injury risk. Teron Armstead, injury risk. Xavier Howard, injury risk. David Long, the linebacker they just signed from Tennessee, injury risk. Hyde, is there anything that this team can do in training camp that will help preserve these guys for December and January games?
Yeah, and it's what I'm going to write this week, which is we'll see those guys in September. Why even get them in shape, get them work in more contained and practices basically against the opposing what's Atlanta and Houston they got this year, where Tua isn't going to get hit, and that, but I would not expect to see them at all in any preseason, or if it is, it's Tua handing off the ball 3 times and going out. But you're not going to – Teron Armstead, what does he possibly need to play training camp for? But that's the risk with this team, really. When Teron Armstead went out of the games last year, 4+ games, the Dolphins' offense was a disaster most of the time. I get it just matched up with Tua a lot of times. Four games matched up with Tua's absence too. Now, Teddy Bridgewater came in and threw 300-plus yards in 3 quarters without Armstead, but they had turnovers in those two. And so, you look at what to expect. Let's see what the backup left tackle does. Is Isaiah Wynn the guy there? What do they have? What have they done to beef up some of their depth is really what you look for in preseason.
And Furones, one thing that we saw with this Dolphins offense, when we talk about, tapering Tua's participation and Teron's participation, those are significant guys in the offense, obviously. This offense the passing game is based a lot on timing, right, and rhythm. So how much do you need Tua in there in preseason games to get that rhythm and timing with Waddle and Tyreek Hill? And along with that, we know that this team had a lot of penalties, a lot of pre-snap penalties. We know that this team had chain of command issues getting the plays in before, into the huddle. So how much, Furones, do we need to see those things ironed out in preseason games? 2 quarters, 1 quarter, or can you get that done in joint practices?
Well, Dave only wants to see Tua in for 3 snaps and just handing the ball off. Don't rob us of that moment where Tua throws a deep ball to Tyreek Hill in the first play of a preseason game. Or that training camp bomb.
When he does it in practice, oh my God! It is. I gotta admit, it gives us something to write about. But if I'm Mike McDaniel, there's no, other than helping us out, there's not a whole lot of value in it.
Yeah, but Tua did get a whole season of that. Now we did see the play calling issues, getting the plays in a timely fashion, rear its ugly head in that playoff loss. Now that was with Skylar Thompson in at quarterback. That was with a lot of other backups. I think 3/5 of the offensive line had a different starter in a different spot. So. A lot of issues that were to be worked out there. So it kind of just reared its head at the worst time, but they've had a whole season of that. They'll get the training camp, and it's a lot of continuity on that side of the ball. Most of the players are returning, and the coaching staff is also still there. When you talk about Mike McDaniel, that's second year under the same offense for a lot of these guys, Tua included. First time in a long time for him because he's had different OCs going back every year through college. And then different same OC, Frank Smith, and then also quarterbacks coach Darrell Bevell, all the continuity there. So preseason, maybe not too much. You just need some reps, get into a little bit of a rhythm, feel the game, but then he'll be able to seamlessly get into the thick of things come the regular season.
Okay, last thing on training camp for both of you guys. Is it more important in this training camp to have the offensive starters out there together? Again, like you said, Furones, this is the offensive second year. Most of those starting positions are already decided. Or is it more important to get the defense out there together? First year under Vic Fangio, you're working in 2 significant additions in Jalen Ramsey and David Long. Furones, we'll go to you first. Offense or defense, who needs preseason game action?
I'd say most of the time it'd be the offense and that the defense could work together. But I'd say under these circumstances, new defense. A lot of guys that have been a product of Josh Boyer's system, like a Brandon Jones. He's used to just being that free blitzer. So if he's competing for that strong safety spot, one of the position battles we're talking about, then I think you want to see him get reps. Now he's got to get healthy as well. He is not starting on PUP, but he is coming back from that knee injury. So probably there more so than anyone on offense.
And Hyde, what do you think? Is in preseason games, not joint practices or training camp, preseason games, offense needs to work more or the defense needs to work more, or do you just rest most of those starters on both sides?
I can't separate preseason games anymore from joint practices and inter practice scrimmages. Okay, it used to be an event almost going to a preseason game where you'd see them play the first quarter, then a half, and then the third preseason then they go into the third quarter. Now nobody plays. So I'm going to lump it all together and say, what's important to me, I would think, is for Vic Fangio to see his defense, who can do what. He's had an offseason to look at everybody, and he obviously wanted Jalen Ramsey. He wanted the linebackers here, okay? But to see who can exactly do what, because this is going to be an entirely different deal where they don't blitz, okay, where they play a lot. They don't play man-to-man in the back end. They play a lot of zone. So who can make that transition, so to speak, and really stand out. And so I'd say it's more Vic Fangio seeing his defense.
All right, guys. Let's go over to our second segment. We're going to talk offense. We're going to talk about a star player, Tyreek Hill. He has said twice that he thinks he can get 2,000 receiving yards. That would be an NFL record. He had, 1710 last year, 1,700 and change, whatever it was. I think 1710 last year. Can he get 2,000 receiving yards, and what would it mean for the offense? Now, to me, I think if he reaches that goal, that means the offense is really humming. It's really doing its job. I don't think that Tyreek could get 2,000 yards by the same offensive distribution and Tyreek just getting the ball more. I think if he gets 2,000 yards, it means the run game has been increased, has taken on a significant role and is doing better. I think it means that Tua plays maybe 15 games, and I think it means that you see extended drives as opposed to a series of big plays from this offense. I think that if Tyreek gets 2,000 yards, that is a really good thing for the offense, as opposed to it meaning, well, all they did was throw to Tyreek Hill. I think it would be a great thing, and I think that he can get it. Furones, what can he get it, and what would it mean for the offense? What would it tell you about Mike McDaniel, Tua, and this offense?
Well, he was on pace for it deep into last season, Tua's second concussion stint, as well as some of the offensive struggles once the schedule got kind of tough late, kind of derailed it. Maybe even some of those games in November where they dominated against Houston and Cleveland, you didn't need Tyreek Hill to go off that much, and you utilize that run game a little bit more with a lead. So which is the other thing to factor in is I think Mike McDaniel will consciously look to run the ball a little bit more. His run game was effective on a yards per carry basis last season, but went underutilized. So if the Dolphins go to the ground more often, that makes it a little bit more difficult for Hill to get the chances he needs, especially if the defense also complements the run game by getting stops, keeping Miami ahead, or they go to a ball control late instead of airing it out, vying for comebacks. So a lot of factors, but 2K can be within reach for Tyreek if he maximizes his opportunities. But there's a reason no one reaches that number. It's incredibly challenging in a season, albeit now with one more regular season game. But we will see it one day, especially with what we also see from Justin Jefferson in Minnesota and others. I mean, Calvin Johnson years back came very close setting the record.
Hyde, what do you think? What can he get it, and what would it mean for the offense?
First of all, Perk, what are you talking about? Run the ball, running their long, controlled drives. That's not. This offense is big play strikes, and for him to get to, I love that he's talking about getting 2,000. Okay, right. I'd almost like it better if he said, "I want to get more touchdowns," because if there was anything that it was a historic year he had last year. He was the clear MVP of the team, and he opened up the offense. He did so many things that told you what the modern game with a good offensive coordinator and a very accurate and guy making decisive decisions at quarterback can do. So I love that he's talking 2,000 yards. It seems a little out of reach, but what they really need to do is if they could get more touchdowns out of him. He had 4 touchdowns last year. And so that'd be if you're going to say what's the number. I'm not sure I have that number right, but they need more touchdowns out of him, really.
Yeah, and Justin Jefferson had 1,809 yards receiving last year. Tyreek had 7 touchdowns last year. Had 1,710 yards and 7 touchdowns last season. To my way of thinking, I just – hopefully Mike McDaniel will have a more balanced offense this year. I think he fell in love with the pass game, and that's understandable, right? You got Tyreek Hill, you got Jalen Waddle, 2 guys who can dominate, 2 guys who can run deep and catch a 40-yard touchdown pass, or who can take a 7-yard pass and turn it into a 40-yard touchdown pass, or 50 or 60 or 70 or whatever. But I think to me, if Tyreek gets to 2,000, it just shows that the offense has grown. I just don't think that this offense would just go Tyreek. I think the offense would grow equally and evenly, and I think the defense would be playing a role. I think if he gets to 2,000, it also, to me, it would mean the defense is getting off the field. They're getting third down stops. that they're not allowing teams to have these 12-play, 10-play drives that chew up so much time off the clock. It means that, Austin Jackson is probably protecting Tua's blind side, right? It probably means that Teron Armstead is staying healthy. And I know that I'm reading a lot into this and asking a lot because, for Teron to stay healthy and Tua and AJ, Austin Jackson to be playing well, that's asking a lot already. But I think if all of that stuff happens, I think Tyreek gets 2,000 yards. That's asking a lot, but I think it does. I don't think Tyreek gets 2,000 yards on his own just by getting more receptions. I think it's part of a bigger, more successful Dolphins team, not just offense, but Dolphins team. Is that realistic, Hyde, or am I living in fantasy land? Can Tyreek do this all on his own and they still finish 9-8 and lose in the first round?
Well, I mean, I agree with some of the things you said about the defense. On paper, it looks just like an elite defense, okay? And to me, right behind Aaron Rodgers in New York, going to New York, is Vic Fangio as far as off-season moves by a team, okay? You're getting the coordinator everybody wanted. And whenever he's brought up, I was talking to Jimmy Johnson recently, the first thing he said, oh, man, Vic Fangio. So this guy is you put him with some of the talent they have. Now, there's going to be some I'm waiting for some contracts to get settled here. Okay, so who's going to be happy and who's going to be unhappy, and who's going to be motivated. Maybe this plays into, that gets into me. They're throwing all their chips into this season. Okay, all their chips are going into this season. So Tyreek Hill, 2,000 yards again. Can he get? I don't know. I mean, that's a number out there. The point is, I love guys setting the bar high for themselves, okay, when you can wrap it into a team success, okay? If he gets 2,000 yards, as you said, it means the team's doing some great things.
Furones, let me ask you this, okay? So along with the Tyreek and 2,000 yards receiving, what do you think would be some other significant individual goals from this team? I mean, Tua playing with 16 games? What are some other things that could feed into that? Teron playing 14 games. What else would feed into Tyreek getting that 2,000 or approaching that 2,000? Do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of them there. Tua playing mostly all of his games, yep. Whether it's 16, 15. Teron being there for just as many, because we've seen how the offense looks when he is on and off the field, maybe sometimes coinciding with Tua. So those are a couple of the things. You mentioned if a third receiver emerges, whether it's a Robbie Chosen, yep. Or a Braxton Berrios, or the running backs, being able to throw to them. So if the defense is more honest and isn't just honing in on Tyreek Hill, which you also have to give Jalen Waddle that same type of attention, then that could probably lead to Tyreek Hill getting those opportunities and relieving some of that defensive pressure that opponents will be sending his way. So Jalen Waddle finishing in top 10 again, and maybe earning his first Pro Bowl. Now, it's really tough for two receivers on the same team to get to the Pro Bowl, but if some of those things can happen, then yeah, I can see if the defense is getting off the field, hitting certain milestones, and maybe in the top half of the league, top 10 in third down defense, which we saw they didn't do well in that category last season. Forcing turnovers, they were toward the bottom of the league. So if they up that number, that helps get you off the field quicker. If their run defense is similar, stop opponents from having those time-consuming drives. So they already did that last year. If they continue that, but maybe add some of the stopping the running quarterbacks, those dual threat quarterbacks. That was kind of the only thing in the run game that didn't work for them last year. So if all these things can kind of marry together, then sure, that could lead to the overall team success, as well as maybe Tyreek Hill getting those opportunities and fulfilling them.
Okay, last question on this topic. Would the presence of a significant addition at running back, Dalvin Cook, would that help Tyreek get 2,000, or would that hurt his chances of getting 2,000? Dave Hyde.
I think you're seeing that nobody thinks Dalvin Cook is a guy who's going to change significantly teams, okay? Obviously, it's the payment of running back is the issue here. And Dalvin Cook's good. He's a good talent, but nobody thinks he's going to throw him over the top, or they would have thrown a lot of money at him. Okay, so do you want Dalvin Cook? Of course, but is he going to change a lot of Tyreek Hill getting 2,000 yards? No, not in my estimation.
Okay. All right, Furones, what do you think?
I would say the Dolphins already have a strong run game. Whether they add Dalvin Cook or do not, that would just be another back that you have to get his touches, and probably you have to definitely move him to the front of the line in terms of getting those running back touches. Now, what it could do is if teams really fear the Dolphins' run game, then that could lead to Tyreek Hill getting open over the top, where a lot of Tyreek Hill, what he had to do last year is get those 20-yard catches in the middle and then maybe go for it outside of the Baltimore game. We saw him get deep open a couple times, maybe some other instances. But I think it would be probably fewer targets for him to get that number, but maybe some opportunities to win over the top if the defenses really want to bring in and have cases where they stop the run game, try to really get into the box.
All right, before we go, we do have a question from one of our viewers here, and we always welcome and appreciate that, from Raphael Courtwright, one of our regulars. It says, gentlemen, can you see the Dolphins having 3 wide receivers hit the 1,000-yard mark? Hill, Waddle, and Chosen. And I'll say before you answer, last year, Tyreek had 1710, Jalen Waddle had 1356, the number 3 receiver in yards, Trent Sherfield, 417. So that's a big drop. I don't think they could do that. I think that would be absolutely incredible if you have 3,000-yard receivers. I don't think it happens. Furones, what do you think?
No. You mentioned it right there. Trent Sherfield is number 3 at 4 something. So to be that number 3 guy, especially with a top 2 like that, it would really take a situation where probably you don't want that. Tyreek Hill maybe got hurt for a while, still had enough to get 1,000 yards, and then Robbie Chosen or someone gets enough targets later on to also get there. So, but even then, it would still be quite a long shot.
Yep. Hi.
No, I don't see it. What you want though is somebody to have some presence as a third receiver.
Right.
Okay, somebody step forward and last year they really didn't have a third. They had 2 great top, weapons, but then it fell off everywhere, and including tight end. Mike Gesicki. I will say this: Mike Gesicki is going to be missed in the red zone. Okay, he was their leading target in the red zone, and the numbers when he's on the field in the red zone and off the field in the red zone are significantly different. So I'm curious to see their red zone offense, especially when they go to passes, to how they replace Gesicki. And I didn't understand why Belichick got him. After looking at those numbers, I understood why he went after him.
Yeah, Gesicki last year was the team's number 3 as far as receptions with 32. He had 362 yards, 5 touchdowns. Those 5 touchdowns were number 3 on the team. Waddle had 8. Tyreek Hill had 7. Mike Gesicki had 5. So I think you're right, Hyde. He will be missed. We'll see how they make up for it. But having a number 3 person emerge as a receiver, whether it's a wide receiver, a tight end, or a running back, that's going to be something that we watch in training camp. All right, let's get to segment 3, season expectations as the Dolphins enter training camp. Now, these expectations could change after September, after Halloween, whatever. Right now, I see the Dolphins as a 10-win team. I'm unsure they'll make the playoffs. I'm unsure if they win a playoff game. Now, look, I know that I'll say this. Last season, the Dolphins were 2-6 against playoff teams, 2-3 against playoff teams in games in which Tua started and finished. Also, remember the Dolphins were tied for 4th in penalties with 111, 5th in penalty yards with 881, and they were number 1 in total flags, which includes offsetting penalties and declined penalties. But I'm still expecting big things from Tua, Hill, and Waddle, and I'm expecting big things from that Fangio-led defense with Jalen Ramsey and X on the corners, and Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips as the edge rushers. So I'm 10 wins. They make the playoffs. I'm not sure if they win a playoff game. Furones, what are you thinking as they enter training camp as what you're seeing for this team?
All right, I'm going 11 wins. I'll say 11-6. I think a lot of last year's issues can get resolved, whether it's through the additions defensively of a mind like Vic Fangio and an elite cornerback like Jalen Ramsey, or just through the continuity on offense in another year of Mike McDaniel's system. I think he improves overall as head coach. You still got to leave a bit of a buffer because you have to see Tua make it through a season healthy, and it's a very tough schedule between playing in the AFC East, facing the AFC West, and NFC East. So I'm not going to go wild with 13 or 14 wins, as good as I feel about what's going on, but I say 11 wins. I think that'll top the Jets and Patriots in the AFC East with an outside shot. They can get the division over Buffalo, but maybe a little bit more likely that they get a top wild card, the 5 seed, and maybe get a decent postseason draw if it's at Jacksonville, if they win the South and in the first round. And if we take the predictions a step further, then that could be a good draw in the first round to potentially lead to the first playoff win since 2000 for this franchise.
Yeah. Hyde?
If they don't get the first playoff win, this is a mess because they got a lot of big decisions coming financially, salary cap, starting with Tua next offseason. So, like I said, all their chips are in. I expect that. I would have picked 11 wins, but you did. So, and I can't go down to 9 wins. So do I have to go to 12 wins? Look. The AFC has a lot. There's probably 10 teams thinking we have a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Okay, right now. This is the best Dolphins team going back since the mid '80s on paper. The coaching staff, the talent they have. The question is they have, and we mentioned it here, that they have signed on with a lot of guys with injury history. Tua hasn't played. Going back to his senior year at Alabama, he hasn't played 4 years, a whole season. Teron Armstead has 1 season where he played 15 games. And now you guys are talking, well, we need him to play 16, 15, 16. He's only done that once. So a lot of things have to, you get into Bradley Chubb too, injury. So a lot of things have to come together, and it has to be almost a perfect storm of beauty for the Dolphins to go deep into the playoffs. But I expect them to win a playoff game for sure.
Let me ask you guys this, and this is something that I wrote about and something that I've harped on, and I think that I'm the only man saying this. What about coaching? And with Mike McDaniel, and I know that it's never, it's rarely a coach versus coach matchup, right? It's you always look at the players, but Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins lead off against the Chargers, right? Brandon Staley probably had the best defensive game against them last year. Then you play Bill Belichick. Then it's Sean Payton with Denver, and then it's Sean McDermott with Buffalo, and then it's Brian Daboll with the Giants, the NFL Coach of the Year. And then you get Frank Reich with Kansas, Carolina. Then you get Nick Sirianni with Philadelphia. You come back with Bill Belichick. Then you get Andy Reid, and that gets you to the bye. Is Mike McDaniel going to be the underdog coach in most of these matchups, and does that matter a single bit, Dave Hyde?
I don't think it matters. Is he the underdog in this? The question is, does he have answers? Brandon Staley took away the middle of the field last year. You look at Tua's numbers. Tua ranked 2nd in the league throwing between the numbers.
Yep.
He was 22nd throwing outside the numbers. So Brandon Staley by then had a whole, almost a season's worth of numbers stacked up, and he said, okay, let's take away the middle of the field. A lot of teams saw that. What these face the rest of the year? Teams trying to take away the middle of the field. And what's he going to face now? So there's got to be adjustment. What has Mike McDaniel come up with to take that away, to help Tua out, to help the offense out? Okay, so that's just one. And they're going up with against defensive minded. I will say also, there's almost a 2nd-year curse among Dolphin coaches in the last 20 years. You look at what's gone on. They come in and they get the opposite effect, and it helps them because, for instance, Flores was a tough-minded defensive guy, cold-hearted. Mike McDaniel's complete opposite, warm-hearted, positive. We'd all love to work for Mike McDaniel, right? You'd love that atmosphere to come in. Now, is that conducive to in the 2nd year? Can you build on that? You go through the list of, Dave Wannstedt, Nick Saban, Cam Cameron didn't get to his 2nd year.
Yep.
But you go down the list.
Adam Gase.
Toronto, Joe Philbin, Adam Gase, all of them had really good first years and not so good. The descent started their second year. So I don't know exactly why that is. That'd be a whole different show. But the point being, strategy is one thing that Mike McDaniel, the middle of the field was taken away. What do they do? What do they come up with? Okay, that's one, for instance. The other part is being the bigger, broader head coach. I will say, bringing in Vic Fangio showed a lot, that he's not afraid to bring in a guy who almost is above him, revered in the NFL.
Yeah, and Furones, how much does the coaching matchup matter, or is it more significant that your staff can make mid-game and mid-week adjustments in preparation for what's coming?
Yeah, I would say more so that, the latter, and it's not so much whether it's Mike McDaniel versus a certain coach, but it's Mike McDaniel and his staff and his personnel against that coach and his staff and their personnel. So that changes week to week, and it would have been even more so going into last season. Mike McDaniel's first game was against Bill Belichick, so you would say, well, tremendous underdog there, and McDaniel ended up winning that one. Or you said, well, really the Dolphins won that one. If you put it as McDaniel versus Belichick, which he would tell you they're not lining up at the 50-yard line for an Oklahoma drill, but then, yeah, he was able to get that win, and he had a game against John Harbaugh to follow, and then Sean McDermott. Those were his first three matchups, and started 3-0. So, yeah, you can't look at it through the lens of just this coach versus that coach, and that this coach is in his second year, and Bill Belichick is maybe on the verge of challenging for the all-time record in wins. It's more so about what he has as his personnel and how he utilizes that, and then the adjustments that they make once the strategy of the opponent is revealed.
Okay, let me ask you guys this thing, because we're talking kind of full season perspective here. What is more significant schedule-wise, that you're starting 3 of your first 4 games on the road, at the Chargers, at New England, and at Buffalo, with a Denver game, home game mixed in, or that you finish with 4 of 5 at home? You're at home against Tennessee, the New York Jets, Dallas, and Buffalo, with a Baltimore road game mixed in. So, I mean, the getting off to a strong start so you're not in a hole, or having that advantage at the end so that you can finish strong, which is more significant to you, Furones?
Yeah, and then the weather aspect of it as well. So when you have home games early in the season, then you take advantage of the heat and humidity and putting the opponent on that sideline that's just getting fried for 3.5 hours, as opposed to then if you have your home games at the end, then you avoid the cold weather environments. So if only they could just have home games all throughout the year and just take advantage of the heat and humidity early and then avoid the cold late. But you just can't do that because you need your home and away games. So, yeah, I mean, last season they took advantage of some of those home games. The Buffalo game, they were able to get one, I mean, maybe large part because of that. But then they also did have to go into Buffalo, into New England, and then had the bad draw of that Christmas Day game being a record or second coldest home game in franchise history. So, yeah, which one do you prefer? Maybe we don't see that tail off at the end if you do have those home games toward the end. But it is sometimes nice to have that home field advantage early in the season when you can utilize it most.
Yeah, I like finishing with the 4 of 5 at home because, I think that as the Dolphins come into those last 5 games, they're probably no worse than, 6 wins? No worse than 6 wins, right? And so that if you need to get 4 out of those last 5, at least you're at home for 4 of them, and you're at a great advantage. If you come in with 7 or 8 wins, then all right, now reaching 11 or 12, all right, that's within reach. Hyde, what do you think? More significant to finish strong at home, and so you can dig your way out of a possible hole, or is it more significant that you have 3 of 4 on the road to start, and you've got to avoid getting that into a hole early?
Well, I'd rather have the home games at the end of the year when you're needing wins. I will say also this: look at their schedule. It's a tough schedule, projected by Las Vegas win projections to be the second toughest in the league. That's because all the AFC schedules are tough. Right. But they only play 7 real road games. Okay, 7 out of 17. So it's a good schedule playing at home. Okay, to me the only problem starting out this way is you go to the Chargers. Okay, They're healthy this year. They were, we talk about the Dolphins injury. The Chargers, no Bosa, no J.C. Jackson, no Rashawn Slater last year when they played them. Okay, maybe if you play them later in the year, these guys with injury history would get hurt too. So, but I would much rather have the home games at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's almost like an SEC schedule. It's almost like an SEC schedule.
Yeah.
It is so challenging, but then you also have more home games and road games because some of those out-of-conference games, they make sure the SEC schools, they get them all at home, and then you even have a neutral site game like you always have Florida, Georgia every year.
Right.
So that's just taking place in Germany, not so close to.
Who's the Division II homecoming game? That's the question.
That's right. Exactly. All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to leave it there. Thanks to everybody for watching this edition of Dolphins Deep Dive, our training camp edition. We will be coming at you periodically through training camp and then every week during the regular season. So tune us in, sunsentinel.com, or again on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. That's Dave Hyde. That's David Furones. I'm Chris Perkins. We will see you guys again during training camp. Thanks.